Welcome back. You're watching Business Today here on KTN News. Kenya Bankers Association, the banking industry body representing all registered banks, has today signed on to the Code of Ethics for Business in Kenya and announced plans to adopt a self-regulatory framework and conduct standards for member banks. KBA Chief Executive Officer Habil Olaka said that the association will work closely with key partners to introduce requirements that are tied to the Code of Ethics developed on behalf of the private sector by Kenya Private Sector Alliance, Global Compact Network Kenya and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers as a key intervention towards addressing corruption and unethical practices within the government and the private sector.
Sign up to use this service are people who are committed to integrity. They are committed to providing their members of staff an avenue through which they can report any action that is inconsistent with their stated policies and the laws of the land within the country in which they operate.
All right, and that is one of the directors of KPMG, one of the audit firms, talking about whistleblowing, which also comes in handy with our discussion this afternoon. Well, we're now joined by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers Chief Executive Officer Phyllis Wakiaga. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Joy.
Well, speaking of Code of Ethics, what exactly does this mean to the normal businesses we have in Kenya?
Thank you very much, Joy. Corruption or unethical business practice is very dangerous to the sustainability of any organization. So as the business community, we came together to develop the Code of Ethics, which lays down some ethical behaviors that businesses should have in terms of their systems, their interaction with their customers, their employees and suppliers, to ensure that they are not engaging in acts of corruption or bribery within the business. So this Code of Ethics is developed jointly by the Global Compact Network, which is housed at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And the code is signed up to by business people who commit to have ethical practices within their businesses and improve the integrity of their processes.
All right.
Yes.
And so when we're talking about banking institutions, you know, a lot of attention has been going towards banking institutions.
Yes.
But you know, those are just one of them, or should we just say it's just one of the sectors?
Yes.
And we're also seeing a lot of non-compliance from the rest of the sectors or industries around the country.
Yes.
So what measures are being put in place to ensure that all of the businesses around the country are able to comply?
You're right about the challenge of corruption. About a third of our country's budget is actually being lost to corruption, and that means and translates to about 300,000 jobs annually. That's a big number for business. And economic crimes, which are corruption, fraud, bribery, and another host of unethical behaviors, are really becoming a challenge that we need to address as businesses, because they actually affect the overall growth of our business, the attraction of investors, and they lead to certain crises that we see happening in the corporate world. So what we are doing as a business community is, first of all, looking at ourselves internally and saying, what can we do to improve our own compliance systems within the organizations? What can we do to improve our staff's understanding on issues of compliance, so that as far as possible we prevent this? We've been working on the Code of Ethics and having companies sign up to it and ensuring that they commit. And once they sign up, it doesn't end there. We assist them to build the systems, to have the right training so that they build the capacity of their staff. And every year under the Global Compact Network, we communicate the progress we've made. So it's an ongoing process. We've also worked very closely with the government in developing the anti-bribery bill, which will have some stringent measures around compliance and issues to do with economic crimes. And we hope that this approach will be able to be a two-pronged approach that addresses the issues internally, but also provides a regulatory framework to deal with these issues.
All right. How detrimental could it be to companies that do not comply?
First of all, what happens is, of course, you lose the confidence of your customers, you lose the confidence of your staff, your company can almost collapse because of some of these economic crimes. And we've seen this happening around the world, where companies have engaged in economic crimes and it's led to the collapse of their companies. So why we are keen about this is we think we need to build the right capacity. And that's why the Global Compact Network is having a training next week on 27th and 28th on business ethics and integrity, where we'll be assisting companies to set up the internal compliance departments and come up with the right system so that they can deal with issues of unethical practices. and be more preventive in nature, because we need to be able to curb this before it happens. And if at all it's happening, these sort of systems are able to red flag in good time so that you address the issues before they become a large crisis for the company. Yes.
All right, and now that you put it that way, going forward, what should we expect? Which are the best practices that we are looking at today?
Going forward, what we are looking at, first of all, is capacity building, making people aware of the implication of engaging in these economic crimes, having the right systems in place to be able to detect any economic crimes that could be occurring within the company, having whistleblowing policies, as you mentioned, so that we are able to raise these issues in good time, taking good use of the internal audit and risk department so that we're able to assess risks way in advance and factor that into our business practices before it becomes too late. So those are some of the things we are looking at, and using the network that we've created, also learning from other companies, what are the best practices in the market, because there are people who are doing this successfully, and it's important to borrow and learn from them.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Phyllis. We do appreciate the time taken to come talk to us about
Yes.
anti-corruption compliance and just about the code of ethics that banking institutions and the rest of the business companies need to comply with today for them to be able to have or at least abide by the global best practices. Now, Barclays Bank Chief Executive Officer Jeremy Awori has come clear on the court case in which 20 employees of the bank went to court after they were handed letters of redundancy. The CEO says some of the employees were dissolved into other departments of the bank, and it was painful that some did not meet the pack in a cost-cutting exercise that has nothing to do with Barclays PLC selling its stake in Barclays Africa Group Limited.
I think when we look at some of these things, I think what it will do is it was going to raise certain areas where there's going to need to be more rigor. I think it's going to also raise the level of reporting and transparency around certain things like insider lending, whether directly or indirectly through other entities. Frankly, for governance sake, even if it is an entity that is borrowing, but there's a director who is an ultimate beneficiary, if you ask me, that should be disclosed to the board, yeah, in all transparency, so that at least they can make that decision knowing that the ultimate beneficial owner is one of them and that there's no bias in terms of the credit decisions. Time will tell whether in this institution those disclosures were made. There's also a requirement for insider lending to be reported to the central bank, for them also to be aware as to the regulator. So, for example, if I'm to borrow, I have to disclose my borrowing not only to my board, but I also have to disclose it to the central bank. Yeah, and the same applies for senior managers, and the same applies for the rest of the board of directors. And we treat that extremely seriously and are completely transparent about it.
The shilling has remained steady into today and could ease slightly due to end-month imported dollar demand from sectors like energy and manufacturing. Commercial banks have quoted the shilling at 101 shillings and 10 cents buying and 101 shillings and 20 cents selling to the dollar, and changed from Wednesday's close. The shilling has gained 1.1% against the dollar so far this year. Meanwhile, the weighted average yield on the 364-day Treasury bill aged up to 11.8% at auction on Wednesday from 11.791% last week. The yield on the 182-day Treasury bill slipped to 10.691% from 10.938%. And central bank said it would offer bills of all tenors worth 10 billion shillings next week. Also, the weighted average yield of accepted bids on Kenya's 5-year Treasury bond rose to about 14.334% on Wednesday from 13.947% at the last auction in February. The bank said it received bids worth a total of 36.35 billion shillings for the 20 billion shillings it had offered. On this week's episode of The Adventurer, we featured Joseph Kipkorir, who found himself in the stone-cutting machine-making business after a tireless job search without any success. Here now is Ashley Mazuri on The Adventurer.
In Kenya, only about 22% of youths take up engineering courses, a situation that the government is eagerly trying to fix. This week on The Adventurer, we feature Joseph Kipkorir, an aeronautical engineering student who stumbled into making his own stone-cutting machine.
I was in Egerton University since 2009. I was doing bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering, which was a training program. And after finishing that Egerton, we stayed home for like around a year or something, waiting for transfer.
During the one-year period, Joseph faced plenty of hurdles, including lack of school fees that made him idle until his father pushed him out of his comfort zone.
Kafikiria kidogo kidogo kuona how nikaenda YouTube, Google, then I got the principle. I made two frames at first when I came, but then we didn't finish because of challenges mingi za huko na huko, mostly financially. So nikakaa until like last month that one.
Most of the materials used are locally made. Joseph takes us through the process of designing the machine.
Before I design a machine, I do what we call 3D design. Now, my approach of manufacture and design is a modern day digital manufacture, and we call that computer aided design and manufacture. And I use a software called CATIA V5 to do the 3D design. Now when I do the 3D design, I get the specific measurements. I get to see the behavior of each and every part. I can also get the simulation and see how it behaves under what circumstance. Sometimes on a special case, I do something called, stress analysis. There's a software we use that for. So you get to see which part is strained, how much is it strained, which part is dangerous, which part can easily break. Once I'm done with the bill of quantities, I'll get to know the prices for everything. Now I can get to do a quotation for a person. And after I do a quotation, I get the money, go buy the machine materials, build the machine, test it, call the person, give him the machine, and we're done.
Despite the financial challenges faced by Joseph, I sought out to find what troubles him most.
Nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows that I'm here.
With limited capital, a small customer base and plenty of innovative ideas, Joseph Kipkorir not only hopes to have the most durable stone cutting machine in the country, but also be the first Kenyan to have an aircraft assembly plant. Ashley Mazuri, and this is The Adventurer.
And that is The Adventurer. Now, would like to have a conversation about capacity building for small and medium enterprises and how best they can take part more in agribusiness and trade and such like ventures. And we're now joined in studio by a panel of interesting guests I have in studio today who are going to be sharing on the best practices on how exactly we think small and medium enterprises capacity building can happen in a country like Kenya. So in studio with me, I have Ann Gordon and I have Mike Sacco and Mabel Isiolo. They're all from the MEDA project here in Kenya today. And I guess I'll start by asking Ann Gordon, what does the project do particularly?
The project is a 7-year project funded with the Canadian funds, Canadian government, 28.7 million. And that also includes money from Mennonite Economic Development Associates, MEDA, as well. And our goal is to improve the business capacity of small and medium enterprises.
All right. Mike, how exactly do you think this can happen? Because when you look at Kenya, for example, just like any other developing country, we seem to be in sort of a not so sure direction. One side of us is saying, let's go agribusiness. The other side is saying, let's go innovation. But where exactly do you think what way exactly do you think we need to pay most attention?
Well, our project is designed to actually combine the two because we're using a lead firm approach. which is a little bit higher up on the pyramid than traditional. But that allows the companies that are successful to apply to us for matching grants, which help them be more successful and create jobs and increase income. So this project was designed several years ago, but it's very relevant today because, as you say, there's this tension between innovation and growth, and we are targeting companies, mid-sized companies that are doing that, and with matching grants, we hope to help them do it better.
All right. So we're looking at a figure that we have put out that is 28.7 million worth of grants. Let me come to you, Mabel. You deal with these small businesses, I guess, on a day-to-day basis in one way or another. But what exactly are their challenges?
My role at MEDA is actually the gender and environment integration into the project. And so at the design of the project, we are looking at what are these gender-based barriers that the project would like to address. And particularly because of the setup of the project, because it's focusing 3 sectors of agribusinesses, construction, and extractives, the entry point actually is the agribusinesses, where we have got a concentration of women entrepreneurs who form about 48% of that category. And therefore, the gender-based barriers around here, issues of access to financing, for example, and most women do not have access to collateral, and particularly because the issues of access to land has been an issue, which is the biggest collateral in this country. The other one is access to ownership of assets, and mentioning again about the land, the equipment, storage facilities, and the general inadequate knowledge and social rights to all these. So these are some of the things that we are looking at, and when we are talking about the collateral, we are beginning to undertake policy advocacy on issues of women being allowed to use their credit reference in the banks as collateral, as opposed to using the credit reference bureau for assessing them or to determine whether they are or not they are credit worthy. Those are some of the issues that we'll be dealing with.
Okay, so you have come up with an initiative called Maendeleo Sawa. How exactly does it fit into your agenda of making sure that the message goes out to small and medium enterprises?
There are 2 pillars in the program. One is strengthening businesses, and that's really focused on this lead firm approach that Mike talked about. But the other pillar is leveraging investment partnerships. So bringing those 2 together is really what we're focusing on. On the strengthening business side, we're going to do that through a series of innovation grants that SMEs, lead firms will be able to come to us and talk about what it is they need to improve their effectiveness and their efficiency in terms of environmental practices, in terms of improving gender practices. It also might be adopting technology that makes them more efficient, more profitable, and to help contribute and grow the GDP in the country. And so strengthening businesses and leveraging investment, access to finance and capital are really the 2 key pillars of the project.
All right. Now, when you look, Mike, this is for you. When you look at our SMEs today, maybe saving is not part of the culture, and that in a way affects them when they go out looking for credit, because the first question they're going to ask is, what does your asset ownership look like? You know, before they can even get any grants or any loans whatsoever. So, when knowing that we have those kinds of challenges, is there any help, any sort of awareness that the project is creating to ensure that these small businesses are able to, have certain practices in place before they can access this money?
Yes, one of the major components of our project is a business development service provision, which is capacity building of companies. Everyone essentially comes through the same door, which is an online survey application. And then as we do an assessment of their strengths and weaknesses, with identified weaknesses, we help make the linkage with financial institutions. As you know, there are a lot of, again, you spoke about innovation earlier. There are a lot of innovative financing solutions that we can put them in touch with, like discounted invoicing and many of these that we have been in discussions with the firms that provide these, and we're helping make the linkage to the firms that need them.
Okay. Earlier you talked about construction, the extractives industry, and also, trade. But when you look at construction and maybe extractives, there are not so many female people practicing, these kinds of ventures. When you look at extractives, it's all male dominated. When you look at construction, it's the same story all over again. When you look at trade, maybe somehow you can say micro small businesses are run maybe by women, but on the other two, there is still a challenge. What are you doing to make sure that this is all inclusive when it comes to construction and extractives?
In fact, our project is focusing 25% of its resources on construction and 10% on extractives. And we are very particular about women's representation in those sectors. We noticed that, as you mentioned correctly, that they are very male dominated, and building up from what Mike Sakwa said, there's going to be a lot of BDA support in terms of even creation of awareness on female entrepreneurs' rights, on issues of gender-based violence, because especially in the extractives, women have experienced violations in terms of even when they're being relocated from their land, when they're being relocated to the next areas, they have not been consulted even by the government to on how and when they're going to be repatriated from those locations. And therefore, we are interested in the female entrepreneurs who engage in mining, for example, to be able to understand their rights as they get into there, to know that they have a right to do business, that they have a right not to be violated, and even other rights, including user rights of the mines, user rights in terms of natural resources. When it comes to construction, again, there is a big gap in terms of women's representation. And here I would like to take the opportunity to say and congratulate the government for having introduced the access to government procurement opportunities, where women, persons with disabilities, and youth, particularly female youth and male youth, have been allocated 30% government tenders. But again, there are issues of representation, because women have been involved at these levels, particularly in the construction and extractive sector, to bid for tenders where they are being used as proxies. So the project will seek to encourage and build their capacity to be able to engage in this at a much higher level, and particularly even in terms of ownership of the businesses. We'd like to encourage women to register in their own names, women to make decisions about bank decisions about going to the bank and being able to access and use the money or the proceeds from their businesses on their own.
Okay, well, and for anyone who would like to access or have access to these funds, what are some of the requirements that they need for them to even reach MEDA?
Right. Well, we're looking for small and medium businesses who are lead firms, who are rising stars. And rising stars in the value chain means they must have commercial linkages up and down the supply chain, that they must have impact on large numbers. So we're looking for companies that are working with small entrepreneurs in the numbers of 500 to 1,000 or more small entrepreneurs, because that's where we really want to make an effort and help grow the small entrepreneurial business as well. These companies need to understand their end markets, be able to compete, know what they need to do to improve their business to compete. They have to have significant financial strength. So we're looking at them being able to generate income that at least is around the range of $20,000 Canadian dollars per year, and that they have 2 years of financial statements that we will look at and assess. And they are willing and able to make investments, that they want to put their own money, that's why it's a matching grant, and have skin in the game, that they know that they're going to contribute to that. And finally, they are lead sectors, they influence other small and medium enterprises in the sector to help make change across that sector.
All right. And Mike, finally to you, going forward, what exactly do you hope to achieve? Very briefly.
For the 7 years of our project, we're targeting 20,000 small entrepreneurs. We are going to examine or look at 250 SMEs and select 25 to 30 lead firms. So those are the macro numbers of our project. We're just getting started. We launched last night, and that's what we're hoping to do.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for making time to come talk to us about this great venture. As you heard, there's just about 28.7 million shillings that you could help change the lives of other small businesses around the country. And you heard just about what you need to be able to access these funds from Ann Gordon, who is the project manager at MEDA, and Mike Sacco, country manager at MEDA. And we also have Mabel Isiolo, the head of communications at MEDA. Thank you all so much for joining us on Business Today. Now, Ugandan entrepreneurs are making bags out of banana fiber to try and promote Uganda's fight against polythene bags ban. Uganda banned the use of plastic bags in 2007, but there have been some challenges in the implementation of the ban. Question is, would you buy a banana fiber made shopping bag? Take a look. There are a few things as readily available in Uganda as bananas. The starchy fibrous crop is grown widely in the country and makes part of most meals. 35-year-old entrepreneur Sharon Ninsima hopes bananas can be even more valuable by turning their stalks into paper bags. At her workshop in the capital, Kampala, Sharon feeds banana stalks into a machine that extracts the fiber, which will be boiled and mixed with waste paper, then converted into pulp and finally smoothed out into sheets of paper. Researchers say banana fiber is ideal for making paper. Sharon uses the banana fiber paper to make bags that are environmentally friendly, an alternative to non-biodegradable plastics which take hundreds of years to decompose.
You fold a paper bag using hands. We don't have a machine that makes paper bags. So I need a paper bag forming machine. I need it. When I can get those machines, I can have an opportunity to expand my business. I can now starting exporting these bags and these papers.
Plastic bags, locally known as kavedas in Uganda, are popular around the country and East Africa in general, despite a ban issued 9 years ago in the landlocked country. There have been several efforts to ban plastic bags in Uganda since 2007, but the government has struggled with implementation. Under the rules, companies are forbidden from producing, importing or using lightweight plastic bags that are favored by retailers because they're cheap. Environmentalists say discarded bags which pile up on roadsides and unused land spread disease and hurt animals. Rubbish often ends up in wetlands surrounding Lake Victoria, where it pollutes water supplies. Sometimes it is burnt, releasing toxic chemicals into the air. Sharon, who left a job as an office messenger 4 years ago, makes about 50 bags a day. She says with more investment, she can expand her business and start exporting to the rest of the country and East Africa.
Because we have plantain, we have banana plants everywhere. So these are the extraction of the fiber from the banana plantain and improving the paper material, the simple paper material, to something more stronger is something that we desire. And we have seen corporate companies in their corporate social responsibility taking upon these initiatives. Most of these are desiring to have enough market for their branded products to be put in these eco-friendly alternatives to the plastic polythene bags.
Bella Wines, a drinks company in Kampala, is using Sharon's bags as part of their marketing and branding strategy. Bella's CEO, Prudence Konica, says she hopes Uganda can follow in the footsteps of Rwanda, which has led Africa's fight against plastic bags, banning them completely as many other countries choke under the careless disposal of the non-biodegradable bags.
Okavera has never been my choice of packaging, because I saw in Rwanda they were not using it, and paper bags were more durable than these Kaveras. The environment was good. You can imagine now these Sharonese bags. There's no way someone can use it and throw it on the roadside.
Not surprisingly, African manufacturers do not believe in a complete ban on plastic bags, but rather a culture change among consumers. Some environmentalists are putting emphasis not just on curbing production, but also promoting reuse of bags and recycling of plastic waste. Joy Doreen Bira, KTN News. I think I would buy a banana plastic bag, not plastic, banana fiber bag that is actually geared towards making sure that people can phase out polythene bags. We've come to the end of the show. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Now, tomorrow being a Friday, Business Today will be coming to you live from the Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters, where the burning of contraband ivory is going to be happening on the 30th of April. So we're going to be speaking to KWS officials on what exactly this means. They're going to be burning about 150 tons of contraband ivory. So you might want to join us at the KWS headquarters in Nairobi. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Up next is News Hour.